I believe Aang can save the world.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is a Nickelodeon original show that I'm not going to explain that deeply. I'm sure you've seen it. Statistically speaking, there's a good chance you're between the ages of 18 and 25, and there's even a greater chance that you're younger than that, but that's what you told YouTube. So you know what Avatar is. At the very least, you're aware of it. And it's almost impossible to watch this show or think about this show without thinking about the question, what bending would I want? If I could have one of those abilities, what element would I like to bend? And I think there's two answers to this. The first answer is whatever you want, right? This is a hypothetical. It's meant to be fun. If you are a huge fan of firebending, you should be a firebender then. That's the wrong choice, but you should be a firebender if that's what you want. But what if the question isn't what bender would you like to be? What if the question is what bender should you be? There is an answer. It's kind of two answers to that we'll get into in a little bit. But what bender should you be? So when we're asking the question of what type of bender you should be, I think there's kind of two routes of thinking, and they all stem from what world we're in. Obviously, being in this world is different than being in that world. And I want to talk about that world first because I think it's a little bit less interesting because of the circumstances. To be clear, I'm talking about Aang's world. I'm not talking about Korra. If I'm honest, I stopped watching Korra after the first season. I think they made some bad choices with the lore, and I know that it's canon. I don't like it. So we're in a war, 100-year-long war, and there's no airbender, so that already knocks off one of the four choices. Survival is really king here, right? If you're a firebender, you are trying to take over the world. If you're anyone else, you're trying not to get taken over. So the ability to survive, the ability to fight is so much more prevalent than it may be in, first world countries such as, America, where I'm at. So earthbending is a pretty strong contender, and I think one of the best examples of that is Ba Sing Se, and kind of just in general their collectivist mentality, right? Because they have so much strength and so much power as a unit that they have Ba Sing Se, the hardest city for the Fire Nation to capture, and just a fantastic city for the most part. Yeah, so every bending discipline is going to have a downside within that world, and for Earth, it's absolutely Ba Sing Se and kind of just the political tyranny going on. It's not great. They have strong kings and queens and leaders who hoard a lot of wealth, and the lower class doesn't get a whole lot. It's not a great system for a lot of people. You could argue that they're doing what they need to do to survive. I don't want to talk about it. All I'm saying is that would definitely be something to take into account if you're going to become an earthbender in that time. Will you be taken care of? One thing that you can do, though, is take care of yourself. Earthbenders, a huge plus for them is being able to build whenever they want. Toph just builds a tent whenever she wants. Super powerful in a survival setting, obviously, or in a war setting, obviously, because shelter is a basic human need, and it's kind of just removed, not from being a need, but from being something that you need to worry about, because that need is just met. And lastly, seismic sense, obviously incredibly powerful and just very cool. Basically the ability to see anything around you without looking at it because you can feel the vibrations that it has. And Toph can do this later on in season 3. Aang can do this. So we know that it's not specific to Toph. It's something that can be learned, but you need to be a very strong bender to do it. So it's hard to say if I was going to become an earthbender, could I do it, or how long would it take for me to learn how to do it? Taking a look at firebending, is there perks to being a firebender? The Fire Nation sucks. Obviously, in the Avatar time, they're bad because they're going out and just destroying everything. They're ruining other ways of life. They're hurting, they're killing people. It's not a good thing. And I know there's people that point to that and say, well, yeah, but that's what like strong nations do in the real world too. They go to war, they take land that isn't theirs, but now it is. So, that's just what it is. But not only is that a really bad reason for, saying what they're doing isn't a bad thing still, it also just doesn't work because the spirits go against that. We see the spirits mad about what the Fire Nation is doing. The beings that have been here since the dawn of time, who do not know good and evil, who only know the way things are until Korra comes and fucks it up, are not happy with you and think that what you're doing isn't the right thing to do. So you're bad. And outside of that, fire just provides almost no utility. I'm standing in my apartment right now. I can name 3 elements that I could bend right now without the risk of causing severe damage to myself, my apartment, and to everyone in it. Fire just doesn't really make as much sense. And the show spends a while talking about that, talking about the recklessness of it.
But you're a great master. You have powers I'll never know.
Water brings healing and life, but fire brings only destruction and pain.
That kind of just takes it out of any discussion for me, because you may think it's cool, you may think it's, you know, a neat discipline or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you choose for that to be the ability that you can have when really it's unusable in so many scenarios? And the big thing that's brought up is the combat. You know, the people that want to justify going into other land and taking it also want to justify it by saying it's the strongest one. It's, you know, it's, I'm going to be the best fighter. That's just wrong. That's just so wrong. And I'm going to get into that later, but I just want you to know now, fire is not being considered because it is not the best at. So waterbending, very promising. The first thing that they really have is this incredible like community around them. They have a lot of pride in their family and their family lineage. And you know that there's people that are thinking about you and caring about you and protecting you. And that's huge in a war setting, obviously. The next thing kind of just blows everything else out of the water. They have the ability to heal. That puts them leagues above anybody else, like without a doubt. And you also have a really high chance to prosper. So hear me out on this one. How are you going to be introduced to that world if we're actually going to the Aang universe? Are you just going to spawn in wherever you want? Do you get to pick anything about yourself other than the bending, obviously? I don't know, but it doesn't feel fair to say that you get to pick, because obviously you just make yourself super rich. You just make yourself, you know, whatever you want to be. So the only way to do it fairly is that I think after you decide that you want to be born somewhere, you are born into that nation randomly. And when we're looking at the water tribes, it's super simple. The North is incredible, very secure, very prosperous. The South is not. They've been pretty war-torn. They're very small. They're very weak. And the swamp people also exist. It kind of depends if that's something that's, you know, something that you want to be a part of. That's completely up to you. So looking at the numbers for populations in Avatar, 412 million earthbenders, you have no idea where you're going to go. If you're going to be in Ba Sing Se, if you're going to be in a good part of Ba Sing Se, if you're going to be in one of these towns, you know, if it's good, if it's bad, who knows? But what I do know is that a lot of the towns that we see are not doing too well within the show. So it's really dangerous to run those odds. Whereas, you know, the Water Tribe, it's much easier. The North has 20,000 people, South less than 100, Swamp less than 100. For this, we're just going to say they're both at 100. We can calculate our odds here. We have a favorable outcome, which is being one of the 20,000 people in the North, in a safe, secure spot. And then there's our total outcome, 2,000 plus 200 for South and Swamp being added to that. That gives you a 99.01% chance of being born into the North, being born somewhere very safe and very prosperous. And there is, you know, ideas within the Northern Water Tribe about what a woman can and can't do, or should and shouldn't do. That's something that you should definitely take into account. I think it's the big negative of being a part of the Water Tribe. But what I will say about it is that's taken care of pretty quick, like right before the end of the first season. So there is 2 whole seasons where that's no longer an issue, which also shows that that society is willing and able to change. And it's important to note that the sexism doesn't just exist within the Water Tribe. Earth Rumble 6, predominantly male fighters, with, you know, the girls being the ones to hold up the signs and everything. Toph is outside of that, obviously, but even her, she's treated like a princess, like someone that can't do these things. That's also because she's blind. But there's still kind of a lot of sexism coming from a lot of places, even, you know, from Sokka, Katara's sister. So that sexism is definitely something to take into account. But even running those odds, if you wanted to bet on what point of the season you'd get placed into if you're like randomly born, I guess, you're still looking at a 65% chance of being born into a progressive society, being born into season 2 or season 3 Water Tribe. So the ranking is pretty straightforward. I think that being a waterbender in that universe is just the best option, hands down. Earth comes in second, fire, fuck off. Air just can't be considered in this. That's really the only reason that fire is in third. Earth looks strong, water looks stronger. So to run the scenario of waking up in this world, just to go over some things, you wake up as yourself and the world is as it was. Laws apply. You can't just go around killing people, all of that. But you're not considered supernatural. You could decide that other people wake up with bending or it's just you or whatever. But the thing is, like, the police will not hunt you down. The government will not want to test on you. You're not considered an anomaly or something strange. You just have this ability. And looking at airbenders, because we couldn't before, the showing is pretty strong. The thing that I think a lot of people pick airbenders solely for is the ability to fly. That's badass. That's super cool. That's super fun. Nothing really needs to be said about that. Or the next thing, I don't think, the ability to just travel insanely fast on your air scooter. That's cool. You don't even need a car anymore. I like it. The next thing is controlled temperature. If you're like a casual fan of the show, you may not know about this because they did shoehorn it in with Korra. Have you ever noticed how Aang is never cold no matter where he is, despite the fact that he's wearing like linen robes? It's because they can control the air temperature around them by manipulating the currents. Fine. Cool. That's a great thing for airbenders to have. Earthbending. Is it better or worse than in that world? I think it might be a little bit worse, but there's still definitely some pros to it. The first is just making your house. Buy some land, do what you want with the earth on that land. You can build whatever you want. You can design it however you want. You know, granted, you want it to be made out of earth. That's pretty cool. The next thing is just having a great defensive option. Earthbending is definitely the most defensive discipline. And that's really powerful, obviously, in like self-defense situations or situations where you need to stop something coming your way. Earth is the best thing for that, without a doubt. The last one is just utility in general. I'm sure there's lots of things that you could do with Earth to make your day-to-day life better. If you need a bookmark, make a bookmark. If you need a doorstop, make a doorstop. There's just a lot of utility because Earth is everywhere, and that's pretty cool. So what do waterbenders bring to the table? The first thing is just the daily convenience of it. Your shower can always be the perfect temperature. Rain outside, no more rain on you. You can immediately dry off. There's just so much that you could do day to day without manipulating the world around you that would make your life just a lot better. Next thing, healing. This is probably the best thing. I don't think it needs to be explained any further. You can heal yourself. You can heal others. That's great. Last one, immediate freezing. This one, again, is kind of just a daily convenience. Having the ability to have ice whenever you need it for drinks or anything like that is awesome. And you can slide on that ice, not as effectively as an airbender can move, but still, you can fast travel pretty quick. So water is the best one again, and I know that may make me seem like just some Water Tribe fanboy, so I want to go over the objections that you may be having right now. The first is that water isn't available all the time like Earth is, or like a firebender can just fire. That is fair, except for the fact that water is available. I want you to name 3 places that you go on a regular basis that you can't bring water into. Of course you can. You can bring water anywhere. The next is that water has to be manipulated. So like Earth, you lift it up and it stays there. Fire and air, you can kind of just focus on it and it sticks around. Water is fluid, so it has to constantly be moving, which means you have to always be manipulating it. I do think that that's a fair objection to why water bending might be kind of annoying. I don't think it goes as far as to say that that completely makes it not the best option. Can you imagine getting rid of the ability to heal someone's illness or physical condition because you don't want to move the water around? It doesn't work. And the last one that I'm going to talk about for a long time is that it's not a good defense. Not only is it the best defense in the modern world, but the idea around combat and the discussions about it are so dumb. So bloodbending exists, and you may have thought I was going to go that direction, but the truth of the matter is Any single element could kill someone easily. It's a kids show. They can't just go around killing people. The only person that does die on screen is Jet, and even then they try to leave it as vague as they can. They can't have bending be utilized to its full capacity. But in the real world, it obviously would be, right? Something that's always bothered me is at the beginning of season 2, we see that Earth Kingdom douchebag just suffocate Katara by putting her under the ground.
You don't need to do this!
Apparently, I do.
That showed the hand a bit too much, because every other fight that Toph would get in after that, I'd be like, what are you doing? Just dunk him. It's over, right? But you can do that with anything. Airbenders, in theory, could just suck the air out of you, suffocate you immediately. Waterbenders, whether or not you're strong enough to bloodbend, could just freeze your head in ice. And what are you gonna... You're a firebender? Great. You're gonna shoot fire at your own head? No, you're not. Ironically, I think the worst element for actual combat, actual real-life war, would be fire, because it doesn't have an insta-kill option unless you can learn, lightning bending. But again, you have to learn that. I've had these discussions with people before where so much talk around what element they'd want to be is about combat. And the first thing I have to say to that is all of these elements can just kill people whenever they want. We don't see that on screen for obvious reasons, but they absolutely can. And the second point is, how many fights are you getting into? Do you know what I mean? I get it. The world is a scary place, and the ability to defend yourself, the knowledge that you could, is important and it's comforting. But realistically, how many life-threatening scenarios do you find yourself in on a regular basis? I just don't think it's that many. So holding so much of your decision about what bending element you'd want to be on how good of a fighter you might be, it doesn't work. So I just think that the combat discussion is kind of overblown and missing it a little bit. But if I had to have it, I would say that water still comes out on top easily. The thing with earthbending is it is final. You can't really control how strong a rock is. You know what I mean? Yes, you can control how fast you throw it. But even if I throw a bowling ball at you with no force, it's still going to hit you for a certain amount of force. I can't go less than that. So in a self-defense scenario, let's say a dog is running up to you. It got away from its owner. It looks mean. It's coming your way. Are you going to throw a rock at it? Or are you going to suffocate it under the ground? Those are such intense options. Air does a bit better, I think, because you can just blow it away. But even then, you're sliding it on the ground. Maybe you send it a bit too far and it skids and flips and hits something else. There's a lot of variables there. Water, you just freeze its legs, or you make a puddle over it so it loses its balance or whatever. Yes, you can defend yourself with incredible accuracy. You can shoot ice shards through people's heart. You can heat up water to a boiling point and maim people. You can suffocate them with ice cubes. There is so much here, not to even mention bloodbending. But you can also do it non-lethally, and you can do it safely, I guess. So when we're looking at a modern world situation where you may need to defend yourself without wanting, to catch a homicide charge, water is just on top, hands down. For this world, if you had to be a bender, you should be a water bender. For me, I put not Aang. For me, I put airbending at number 2, simply because I think that flying and moving super fast would be awesome. I wouldn't blame you for mixing up 2 and 3, though, if you think Earth is a bit more appealing. Fire does not belong on this list. It's not realistic. Should you get the chance, should you rub a magic genie bottle and he can grant wishes only as long as that wish is about a bending element that you should be water.